Welcome to the second episode of the Python tutorial series. In today's video we will learn all about the main types of variables you will encounter in Python. Variables are used by the computer to store various kinds of data into its memory. A variable is like a box with a number in it. The number represents the value of the variable, and the box represents its name. If you want to know what the number is, all you have to do is open the box. In the same way, if you want to use a variable, you have to call it by its name. In Python, we have many different variable types. We have integers or ints, floats or floating point numbers, complex numbers, booleans such as true or false or 0 and 1, and strings such as pieces of text. To identify the type of variables being used, we will use the type command. An int represents an integer number, that is to say any whole number, either positive or negative, including 0. It is written as a simple number with no commas or periods. For example, let's say a equals 1. In this case, a is the name of the variable, and 1 is its value. If you press enter, we can then retype a, and we can see that the system returns the value of that variable, which is 1. If we write type a, we can confirm that our variable has indeed been stored as an integer. A float is an integer's cousin of sorts. It represents numbers with decimal points, and is written using a period. We can repeat the same steps we did for the integer value to see some examples. If we write b equals 2.3, we can see that b will return its value, and that type b will return a float. A complex, as the name suggests, represents a complex number. This is made up of two parts, a real part, which can be written both as an integer or as a float, and an imaginary part, which includes the j notation. If, for example, we write c equals 2 plus 3j, and we type the variable c, we will get 2 plus 3j, which is its value, as we would expect. If we write type c, we get a complex variable. You can see in this case both the real part and the imaginary part were whole numbers, were integers, but we can also write these with floating point numbers. So if we write d equals 3.5 plus 2.4j, we will see that d has stored its value, and type d is also a complex. A bool is a slightly different kind of variable. It is probably closest to actual computer logic and can only represent one of two states, either true or false. These can also sometimes be interpreted as a 1 or a 0 respectively. This type of variable is extremely useful when your code requires some conditions to be met before being run. Let's see an example. If we write e equals true and make sure it has a capital letter at the beginning, we can see that e will have stored its value as we would expect, and type e will give a boolean. If we write f equals false, again with a capital letter, we will see that type f is also a boolean. The last type of variable we will see today is the string. This is, for all intents and purposes, a piece of text which can include letters, symbols, punctuation numbers, spaces, and also numbers. This can be represented as g equals, in this case, some piece of text. Let's say hello world. Make sure to use the quotation marks to represent the piece of text. You can also see its colors differently. If we write type G, you will see it says str, which represents a string. And if we call G, it will say hello world. Similarly, if we say H is we are in the year 2021, which in this case, as you can see, includes also some numbers, some digits, 2, 0, 2, 1. If we look at the type of variable we have, it will always be a string because it's in quotation marks. Strings can also contain a single letter, number, or symbol. For those who are familiar with other coding languages, a single letter is sometimes called a character, but this is not the case for Python. For example, if we say I equals string k, then type I will be a string. If we say that j is 4, written with quotation marks, then type j will be also a string, even if it contains just a single number. Similarly, k is equal to, for example, a question mark, so just a symbol. If we say type k, it will always give a string. For the sake of completeness though, I should point out that a character method still exists in Python for obtaining letters and symbols from their Unicode code point. For example, if we say CHR of 97, this will be the letter A. If we say CHR of 38, this will be the AND symbol. Now that we have gone through some of the different types of variables you will encounter in Python, let's see how to convert one to the other. This is done easily by stating the type of variable you want to obtain, followed by the variable being converted. For example, let's say A equals 1. If we say float of A, this will become 1.0. You see, it's still the same value, but it's gone from an integer, so without any decimal points, to a float. If we say boolean of A, that will give us true. Remember we said before that true equals 1 and false equals 0. If we say complex of A, that will give us 1 plus 0j. Now why is the imaginary part of the resulting complex number 0? That is because we only specified one value to be transformed into a complex variable. So let's just quickly remind ourselves what b was. b was 2.3. So if we specify inside the complex number argument the second value as well, so in this case we can say complex of a comma b, that will put the value of a as the real part of the complex number, and it will put b as the imaginary part of that complex number. See? Just like that. So 1 is the real part, and 2.3, which is b, is the imaginary part. So remember, the complex variable is the only variable that will accept 2 arguments inside it. If we say integer of b, so b, remember, was a float. If we say integer of b, you'll see it will give us 2, so it will give us only the integer part of that floating point number. Let's go back to what j was, for example. J was 4 as a string. If we say type j, that's a string. But if we say int j, that will convert the value of that string into the number 4. If we say, what was h? We are in the year 2021. If we try and convert this to an integer, and we try and do int of h, see, it will give us a value error. That is because only strings containing numbers can be converted to integers or floats. So in this case, we also contain letters, and therefore it's not valid. That's all for today. If you have any questions, leave a comment below. In the next episode, we will go through operators and how you can use your Python interface as a calculator. So stay tuned, and in the meantime, make sure to like and share this video, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any upcoming videos.